everybody who is now watching this video on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please watch all of our videos. We make a video of every Sunday teaching we have for the last 2.5 years, and they're all lovingly prepared for us by our very talented assistant minister, Reverend Kelly Halleck. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll get a little notice when a new video is uploaded. And a lot of wonderful teachers, CMC ministers, and others have videos here, and they're great to watch. Okay, my talk today, special hate relationships. I had reasons to want to focus in on this particularly today. But before I get into that, it is Father's Day, and I do want to acknowledge the fathers out there. Let me see, Garrick is a father. Garrick is a father. Anybody else a father here in the audience? No, but I'm sure there's some fathers out there on ACIM Gatherland. And all of us probably had a father. And maybe most of us had some sort of relationship with our father. And it's just a wonderful time just to think something nice and loving about your dad. I just want to acknowledge that I worked right next to my father a lot of my childhood because we were farmers, and so I worked on the farm next to my dad and thought we had a wonderful relationship with my dad. I don't think my dad ever really said a real harsh word to me, or at least none that I remember. Actually didn't talk much at all. But no, he was a quiet man. He was a farmer, and I was thinking about my dad, and really, I've talked about my dad a couple times over the last few weeks, and he had a lot of challenges in his life. He had challenges with mental health, and I had the same challenges because on a worldly level, those challenges are inherited. And my dad did as well as he could with his challenges, but by the time his body was my age, and I turned 66 last week, so my father was already retired and had already accepted a much more limited life, and a lot of that was because he was challenged and it was difficult for him. So I offer my own healing and my own activity in life, and the fact that I'm still accepting work challenges, I offer that up to my dad, and we build our healing on top of previous generations. So thanks for all that you did, Dad, and we're taking that healing a step further. Okay, the special hate relationship. In that reading that I read, which is a very provocative one, I think, it says, "Be not afraid to look upon the special hate relationship, for freedom lies in looking at it." So we need to look at these relationships that A Course in Miracles is going to identify as a special hate relationship. Now, this doesn't get talked about very much in A Course in Miracles circles. People are fond of talking about special relationships and generally special love relationships. But as the reading that we read said, that we enter into those special love relationships, or special friendships, let's say, really just to offset the hate. And that at some point we have to look at the hate that we have and the hate that we keep projecting out there into the world. And just as special relationships are very difficult for people to let go of, special love relationships are really challenging, and it's a very challenging teaching in A Course in Miracles, and it's one of those teachings that people have a real hard time actually embracing and doing what I believe A Course in Miracles wants us to do with our special love relationships. People have just as much trouble, maybe even more sometimes, letting go of their special hate relationships. Those people, those places, those institutions that you've decided, that you've got some thought about, that somehow just aren't measuring up. You've got some very, very strong grievance against those people or those things, and it's really hard to let that grievance go. A Course in Miracles keeps talking about letting grievances go, but there are those certain ones that we just want to hold on to. So this came up really strong this past week, and I do want to acknowledge that I got a couple of people really upset this past week, and I'm still sort of dealing with the fallout from that. And I tend to do that from time to time, to get people upset just for no reason really, or just because I'm doing what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. So I want to give that a little bit as an introduction and a warning that some of the things that I may say may upset some people. They may upset some people out there in ACIM Gatherland. They may upset some people here in San Francisco. They may upset some people when they're watching the video on YouTube. Because I'm going to say some things that some people are interpreting as me supporting our president, Donald Trump. And I am not a Donald Trump supporter, and I don't think I have supported our president, Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him. I am a firm liberal. I've been a liberal my whole adult life. I can't see, that ever swaying. But there were some interesting things that happened this past week that involved President Donald Trump, and I thought they were interesting and noteworthy, especially from a Course in Miracles standpoint. And so I just made mention of them, that maybe a Course in Miracles students and all of us would just look at this thing and just, take it to Holy Spirit and see that something is going on. I didn't think I was praising Donald Trump. God forbid you should praise Donald Trump. So I didn't think I was doing that, but I thought some interesting things happened this week that involved Donald Trump. So you probably know what I'm talking about, because on Tuesday, President Donald Trump in Singapore met with Chairman Kim Jong-Un, who is the supreme leader of North Korea. And they had a summit meeting. And this was an amazing thing, because the sitting president and the leader of North Korea having a summit meeting anywhere, and it really involved, our president going to that part of the world. I thought Singapore was a great location for a summit meeting, and they met, and they were very friendly. Now, you got to put this in context. Just like 6-8 months ago, they were threatening to launch nuclear weapons against each other. Kim Jong-Un said that his finger was on the button, and Donald Trump said, I have a bigger button than you, and my button works better than your button. And there was this rhetoric, there was this nuclear weapons rhetoric that was kind of scary and weird. And actually, on our healing team, that was put on. We were praying for that world situation to get healed, and it looks like it has, at least in appearance, at least partly. So the president met with Chairman Kim Jong-un, and they were incredibly friendly. And at the end of their meeting, which I thought was really amusing because it involved lunch, but it also involved them going out and looking at the president's Cadillac. So these were like two kind of macho guys going out there and looking at a fancy car. I mean, could it have gotten more classic than that? I just thought that was just so amazing. And I'm sure it did great things for the Cadillac company. Because that's product placement like you just can't get, But, the president's limo is this souped-up Cadillac. I mean, souped up in the sense that, he can launch a mortar attack on it and it'll probably survive. It's armored. So he's got this armored, amazing Cadillac, and apparently Kim Jong-un wanted to see it, and they went out and looked at it and marveled over it a little bit. Now, a lot of people who do not like the president, didn't like even the summit. And, and talked about how it really accomplished nothing and that it was all for show. And I do want to put it into context. I mean, let's not forget that the Chairman Kim Jong-un just last April, just April 27th, met with the South Korean president, whose name is Moon Jae-in, and they had a historic meeting. So there's something going on. This isn't just, the chairman and our president meeting. It came after that meeting with the North Koreans and the South Koreans. And that meeting was amazingly historic. I just watched a little video clip of it. They have a DMZ, which it just stands for a demarcation zone. It certainly is not a demilitarized zone, because they have more weapons lined up on that border than we can possibly imagine. It's considered one of the most heavily fortified borders that exists, probably the most heavily fortified border that exists in the world. So, but they met, and there's like a curve, and they just met on both of their appropriate sides of the curve, and they shook hands. And then Chairman Kim from North Korea took this historic step over the curve so that he was now in South Korea. And they chatted a bit, and you could see Chairman Kim encouraging the president from South Korea to come back and take a step onto his side of the curve. So they did that, and then they took a walk into South Korea and had their summit. And during their summit, they ended with the signing of this, at least intent, to normalize relationships and to denuclearize the entire Korean peninsula. And at the summit this Tuesday between President Trump and Chairman Kim, they reinforced and reiterated this agreement that had taken place between North and South Korea. And it was actually seen that this was absolutely instrumental for South Korea. South Korea needed the support of the Americans supporting their decision to normalize with North Korea. And apparently that if this hadn't happened, if this summit between President Trump and Chairman Kim had not happened, that would have undermined the whole thing that was going on in South Korea and between the Koreas. So they signed their thing, and I thought it was kind of, amazing because, it's been 65 years since the Korean War ended, but the Korean War never really ended. All they had was a ceasefire. They had a ceasefire, and there haven't been, an open war going on, but there was never any real end of the war. And it does seem like now, certainly since North and South Korea have met, and now since North Korea and the United States have met, that the war is finally over 65 years afterwards. Now, it's probably important just to have a little bit of history of Korea. Korea, before World War II, was actually a territory ruled by Imperial Japan. And so after the World War II, it was decided that Japan couldn't have territories anymore, and they didn't know what to do with Korea. So I think this was 48. And in 1948, the United States and Russia just decided to split Korea in half. Just split Korea in half. And since the Russian troops were more in the north, they kind of took over the north and implemented a leader that was supportive of them. And since the United States was more in the south, they influenced the south, and there were democratic elections in the south, and a democratic president was elected. But now we had two countries when, it's just Korea. They speak the same language. It's Korea. And then a couple of years later, North Korea wanted to unify, and they started a military action pushed into South Korea because they wanted to unify the country. But of course, that was the start of the Korean War, and the United States rallied to the side of South Korea, and there was an incredibly violent and bloody and devastating war in Korea for about 3 or 4 years. And I heard some statistics of just the number of tonnage of bombs that we, the United States, dropped on North Korea is just staggering. It's just staggering. And they bombed everything. You have to understand, this country is not that large. It's as large as the state of Mississippi. So it's not this huge country. And they bombed so much, and so many things, and so many highways and bridges, and everything that they could think of bombing, that at one point the American general said, we've run out of targets. There's nothing left to bomb here. And they kept bombing some more. So, yeah, the North Koreans don't like us very much. I mean, why would they? We decimated their country. And there's been this rhetoric for years. So this is another reason why just the United States and North Korea meeting was so amazing in my view. I don't care if anything comes of it or not. Just the visual of the leaders of these two countries meeting and shaking hands so that the world can see that friendship could maybe actually happen. I think that's just staggering. Now, if that wasn't enough, there was this video. Donald Trump had this video prepared to show to Chairman Kim. And I didn't know about the video because I don't follow the news that much anymore, but my sister calls me up on the phone. And she goes, you've got to see this video. And she said, it's all full of Course in Miracles ideas. And I said, really? She goes, yes. Now, first of all, my sister isn't a Course in Miracles student, so I thought, what does she know about Course in Miracles? But you know, she was right. This video is amazing. And it is all full of A Course in Miracles ideas. Whoever produced or wrote this video must have been a Course in Miracles student. Here's some of the quotes from the video. The past doesn't have to be the future. Out of the darkness can come the light, and the light of hope can burn bright. It comes down to a choice. Will this leader choose to advance his country and be part of the new world? Which path will be chosen? So just take the first line. The past doesn't have to be the future. A Course in Miracles says, I seek a future different from the past. I mean, that's almost the exact same line. Out of the darkness comes the light. That was in the Korean video. A Course in Miracles says, where darkness was, I look upon the light. I mean, these are very similar thoughts. It's just a little bit of paraphrasing here. It all comes down to choice. Will this leader choose to advance his country and be part of the new world? Which path will be chosen? Course in Miracles says, choose once again if you would take your place among the saviors of the world or would remain in hell and hold your brothers there. So somebody decided to use these spiritual ideas in A Course in Miracles to attempt to inspire Chairman Kim Jong-Un to move along on this path towards peace, to sign this document that they signed at the end of their summit meeting. And I don't know what I was more amazed with, the fact that these A Course in Miracles ideas were in the video, or that my sister knew A Course in Miracles better than I had thought she did. Because I just thought it was pretty interesting and pretty amazing, and just something that A Course in Miracles students could look at and think about. As I said, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. Yeah, Kim Jong-Un, that terrible atrocities have been committed in North Korea. And we committed terrible atrocities during our war there as well. I looked a little up the population. The population of the Koreas has more than doubled since the war. There's currently about 25 million people in North Korea. There's actually 51 million people in South Korea. So there's quite a few people there. And there have been terrible things that have happened, and there has been this amped up war-ready preparedness thing that has been going on for 65 years. And now there is an effort to ratchet that down and scale it down. And I think that is worth noting. And I know that there are some people that just want to hate Donald Trump. He's a special hate relationship. I mean, these are those people. We have certain people we just think it's okay to hate. Some liberal friends of mine, really nice people, it's just okay to hate Donald Trump. But we have to look at that. Course in Miracles wants us to look at that. There's all kinds of things we think that it's okay to hate. We think it's okay to hate the government. A lot of people just will say all this real negative rhetoric about the government. People have real negative rhetoric that they say about banks, the banking system. We'll just wrap that a lot, and credit card companies and big banks, and even people in the Course in Miracles community, they like to give a lot of negative, special hate relationship to organized religion, and then traditional Christianity, because they say traditional Christianity perverted Jesus' message 2,000 years ago. So we can hate traditional Christians and the organized church for all that they did to distort the message of Jesus. And it's always this attempt to put this thing outside of us that somehow has control over us, or it's that we're a victim of. So apparently with that rhetoric, the world was a victim of the organized church. We didn't have access to the truth because the organized church somehow prevented us from gaining access to the truth. Well, that can't be true. I mean, that, from A Course in Miracles standpoint, there are no victims, and we always have access to truth. Those ideas cannot really be true, but they're entrenched. We people want to hate somebody. We just want to and we probably wouldn't say we hate them, but we just think they did a bad thing, which is exactly the same thing. If we think they did a bad thing and that we're now the victim of this bad thing that another did, that's a special hate relationship, and that's what we have to let go of. And just like we need to transform our special love relationships into holy relationships, we've got to transform our special hate relationships into holy relationships too. We cannot hold on to a belief in victimization and be the Christ. We just can't. So we have to let go of these ideas that big banks victimize us. We got to let go of this idea that the government victimizes us. We got to let go of this idea that I was victimized by prejudice. All of these things eventually have to get broken up. And we have to change all of those things into holy relationships, relationships that empower us. And that doesn't mean that I like Donald Trump, because I don't. But something unusual was happening there. And I think the Holy Spirit may have been using Donald Trump in that moment, and may have been using that incident. And the Holy Spirit will use anything and everything. There's a movie I'm really fond of. Probably not a lot of you have seen the movie. Maybe some of you have seen it. It was a big movie a couple years ago. It's called Cowboys and Aliens. Now, I know that's a really unusual title for a movie, but it's really a great movie. Cowboys and Aliens. It starred Daniel Craig, who's the James Bond guy, and it starred Harrison Ford, the Indiana Jones guys. I mean, it had big stars, Cowboys and Aliens. And it's a very interesting film about aliens coming and landing like in the Old West. And all the cowboys and the outlaws and the townspeople and the Indians all have to forget their differences and forgive each other, or they're not going to be able to win against the aliens. So Daniel Craig is a murderous outlaw, and he's now being called upon to rally the people and lead the people against the aliens. And at one point he's conflicted and he's troubled because he just doesn't think he's a good enough person to do it, because he's done these terrible things. So he's talking to the preacher, and he's trying to explain to the preacher that I don't know if I'm worthy. I can't do this. I'm a bad person. And the preacher says to him, God doesn't care what kind of person you were. God cares what kind of person you are. And it's an amazing line in that film, just a little line of enlightenment. And then it inspires Daniel Craig to go on and do what he has to do to lead all these disparaging groups of people to win over the aliens. So, letting go of the past, we need to let go of the past. And I think a little bit of the past was let go of this past Tuesday. And it's been being let go of with the whole thing that's going on with the Koreas. And I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to witness to it. I'm going to feel glad about it. And if the Holy Spirit can use Mr. Trump and our president, then great. Then more power to the Holy Spirit and more power to the president. I mean, I know people that hate the president so much, it's like they want him to fail. They want him to fail. And, you know, I just think that's a strange thing. You know, I think wanting the president to fail is like being in a commercial airline flying across the ocean and wanting the pilot to crash the plane. I mean, do we really want the pilot to crash the plane? I would rather the pilot successfully fly the plane. And the fact that Donald Trump, in some people's eyes, has done a lot of terrible things, I think God doesn't care what kind of a person Donald Trump was. I think God cares about the kind of person Donald Trump could be. And so I'm going to practice the course, which is see my brother with no reference at all to his past and give him the blessing of a holy child of God that he deserves. Okay, that's my talk for today. Thank you very much.